Hello friends, welcome to aimstoday YouTube channel, NEET Foundation Biology. In this video, we are going to discuss about famous biologists like Aristotle, Galen, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, Robert Hooke, Carolus Linnaeus, Charles Darwin, etc. Scientists are very important. They contributed their knowledge to our understanding of biology concepts. Without them, it is not possible to understand the typical concepts in biology. The famous biologists, number one, Aristotle. Aristotle is famous for the classification of living things. He belongs to 384-332 BC. Aristotle's zoology and the classification of species was his greatest contribution to the history of biology. Aristotle was the first to classify all living things, and some of his groups are still used today, like the vertebrates and invertebrates, which he called animals with blood and without blood. Aristotle was called the father of biology. He revealed his thoughts about various aspects of the life of plants and animals. He also contributed his knowledge in the embryology also. He is also called the father of zoology. Next, famous biologist, Galen, famous for introducing medical experimentation. He belongs to 129-161 AD. The life work of Greek physician Galen revolutionized the way in which medical research was and is conducted. Galen had a major influence on the development of many fields of medicine, including anatomy, pathology, physiology, and neurology. This great personality, Claudius Galen, is a Roman physician and philosopher of Greek origin. Galen earned a reputation as a practitioner and a public demonstrator of anatomy and preferred extensive dissections and in the animals. The Galen described many formulae containing plants and animal drugs, which he compiled this knowledge in 20 books called Galen works. His theories dominated and influenced the medical science for well over a million. The notable discoveries include the identification of the differences between veins and arteries and recognizing that the larynx generates voice. Larynx is called voice box. So it was proved by this Galen. Next, the famous biologist Anton van Leeuwenhoek, known as father of microbiology, the 16th and 17th century, 1632 to 1723. Leeuwenhoek is well known for his contributions to microscopy and how he applied this to the field of biology. He revolutionized a technique for creating powerful lenses, which some speculate were able to magnify up to 500 times. Leeuwenhoek used the microscopes to find out more about the living world. His discoveries include bacteria, the vacuole of the cell, and banded pattern of muscle fibers. Okay, by his own microscopes he studied different biological fluids and discovered the bacteria. He also introduced the unicellular organisms, protozoa. He is the famous person. That's why he is popularly called the father of microbiology. Next, famous biologist Robert Hooke, famous for discovering the cell, 1635 to 1703. The period. Hooke was primarily a physics and chemistry specialist, but his discovery of cell has been monumentally impactful on the world of biology. Hooke had an extraordinary ability to manipulate microscopes, and when applying this ability to looking closely at a thin slice of cork, observed empty spaces contained with walls, and the term cell was introduced by Robert Hooke. We know that cells are the building blocks of life. Robert Hooke is an English natural philosopher, the first person to see a cell under a microscope. He is the first person to describe the unit life to be called a cell. He invented the compound microscope. He became a scientist in the year 1655 when he was only 20 years old. When Robert Hooke was 27 years old, he was appointed curator of experiments. Next, famous biologist Hooke Linnaeus, known as father of modern taxonomy. Between the period 1707 to 1775, a botanist, physician, and zoologist. All at the same time, Linnaeus came up with the system of naming, ranking, and classifying organisms that we still use today. It was his vast collection of specimens of plants and animals and shells that led to Linnaeus coming up with a way of grouping and naming species. He separated all living things into three kingdoms: animals, plants, and minerals, subdividing them into classes, then into orders, and then finally into genera and species. Carolus Linnaeus is a father of taxonomy, widely known for two contributions. The first one is classification and binomial nomenclature of organisms. He said that every organism can be named with two names, that is, generic name and specific name. He classified nature into kingdoms, classes, orders, genera, and species, which exist till today with some changes, little changes. He named 4,400 animal species and 7,700 plant species through his binomial nomenclature, a two-part scientific name in Latin for every species. He was appointed the chief royal physician in 1747 and knighted by King of Sweden in 1778. His famous book Systema Naturae explains about these species of plants and animals. Next important and famous scientist Charles Darwin. He is famous for the theory of evolution. Probably the most famous naturalist of all time, Darwin's contribution to biology and society is beyond imagination. He established that all species of life have descended over time from common ancestors, the existence of new species occurring via the process of natural selection. According to Charles Darwin, the biological evolution changed in the species over time. This was not a new idea at the time, but there were no good mechanisms to explain how these changes occurred. The natural selection is just such a mechanism, and this is what the Darwin contributed. According to him, nature itself select the better one, the survival of the fittest, the concept. His theory of evolution was published in On the Origin of Species in 1859, and it caused quite the stir. Darwin was disputing the long held belief that all species had been created by God at the beginning of the world. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe our channel.